Good morning, and thank you for joining today's virtual panel as we celebrate the final day of Women's History Month. And happy National Bunsen Burner Day. And as I just learned, March 31st is the last day of Fraud Prevention Month. Welcome to today's Founders Series panel, The Female Founders Journey. We have a power-packed hour ahead and look forward to some great discussion. My name is John Wensveen, and I am the Chief Innovation Officer at Nova Southeastern University and Executive Director of the Alan B. Levan NSU Broward Center of Innovation based in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Before we get into a discussion with our panelists, I would like to take an opportunity to provide an overview of an exciting resource coming to South Florida. The Levan Center is a public-private partnership between Nova Southeastern University and Broward County. We are building an economic and education development engine that is an opportunity gateway for Greater Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, and South Florida with local, regional, national, and international impact. One of our goals is to better link the South Florida innovation ecosystem by offering customized programs, events, and wraparound services to support the founder's journey from birth of an idea through successful exit of a company. Our three themes include innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship. Our four pillars are ideate, incubate, accelerate, and post-accelerate. Our six outcomes include breakthrough ideation, new technologies, talent skills pipeline, new jobs, company formation, and scaling of early stage and young startup companies. We are launching a purpose-built 54,000 square foot facility in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, now under construction, and we look forward to opening this summer. Details of our progress can be found on our website at nova.edu/innovation. Today's panel will focus on a discussion around the barriers for female founders as they grow their startup, and we will share the significant strides female founders have made over several years and how women are being recognized as the fastest growing, most productive entrepreneurs. Gender disparity in startup funding has been a historical challenge, leading to fewer solutions from different perspectives making it to market. The funding gap between male and female businesses has traditionally been wide. Today, in the year 2021, female-funded businesses continue to be underfunded, and there has been little change over the past decade despite the increases shown in the data. According to Crunchbase, in the year 2010, $3 billion of venture funds were raised by companies with at least one female founder, and that amount grew to $6 billion in 2019. Although this is a significant increase, the data does not compare to male-founded companies, where in 2010, $31 billion supported male-founded companies, and in 2019, this figure increased to $195 billion. The number of funded companies with a female founder has at least doubled over the past 5 years over the previous 5, but the growth is sluggish. Interestingly, the median seed for female-only founders was $200,000 in 2010, reaching $460,000 in 2019, while the median seed for male founders rose from $300,000 in 2010 to $600,000 in 2019. Some great examples of recent female founder stories include Colorado-based Guild Education with $157 million, China-based Luckin Coffee with $150 million, India-based Northern Arc with $150 million, New York-based Rent the Runway with $125 million, and New York-based Away with $100 million. I'm so excited to introduce today's panel representing the USA and the United Kingdom. Welcome Jennifer Starkey from TD Bank, representing the Florida Regional Perspective, South Florida Mayor Jane Bolin, representing Oakland Park City and Broward County, Melina Jacovou, joining us from across the pond in London from Propel, providing the UK and Europe perspective, and joining us from Detroit, Michigan, Rachel Cash, representing Elroi, representing the cybersecurity perspective. Panelists, as we transition to the questions, feel free to introduce yourself, your organization, and your role as a changemaker in the female founder's journey, and don't be shy. As we go into question number one, I'd like to state that over the last year or so, there's been a shift with the number of resources and networks available to support the female founder's journey. I would love to kick off our discussion today, getting a better understanding of your journey and the pathway you took as a founder and or leader. And Jane, if I could have you take us off with the first question.
Sure. So thank you for having me. I'm Jane Bolin. I am the mayor of Oakland Park and an entrepreneur. So I have currently two businesses, both in the real estate legal space, and I previously had a management company and have been in this entrepreneurial journey for some time. So, when I look at I'm sorry, restate your question one more time, just as I was giving my intro. I totally
Sure. So basically, this is your opportunity to explain who you are, what you do, and more importantly, talk about your journey of your success. What got you to where you are today?
Thank you. I was like, did you have actual other question? Okay. So what got me here today? When I started my entrepreneurial journey, I was in law school. So I did what everyone told you couldn't do, which is start a business in law school. Trust me, that's what all law students are told. So I started a property management company at that time, and it was really quite a lonely space because one, I was up against being told I couldn't do it. And two, I was a female founder. And so what I did at that time is I looked for resources, and really my journey has been sort of hand in hand with Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a global organization of entrepreneurs, but they helped me incubate. So this is back in 2008. And with NSU's help, I was actually part of the Entrepreneurs Council. It was the first council I was actually included in 2008. And I worked through, built my business, sold a management company in 2010. I had already started the law firm. And then I think it was about 2014, I started a title company as well. So I've been working through this journey really as a community leader and, doing a lot of give back at the same time with philanthropic work. But really the journey has been hand in hand with EO. And I will attribute to them now, and I won't, it's not a pitch for them, but I will say finding that kind of organization, that's what brought me through. And then finding NSU, looking at all of these other organizations that could sort of build me up on the way. But that's what I did. And it was quite lonely for quite a while, to tell you the truth, really quite lonely. But here I am today. I'm now the mayor of Oakland Park and a huge advocate for entrepreneurship and specifically women in entrepreneurship.
So I love those kind of stories, right? When other people say, no, you can, you say, yes, I can. And you're a living example of a success story. So those are the types of messages that we want to make sure that we're promoting. And it's okay to give a pitch to EO. It's a fantastic organization too.
Thanks.
All right, Jennifer.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Starkey. I'm Regional Vice President for TD Bank, America's most convenient bank. I've been in banking 30 years, but I've also been an entrepreneur and a stay-at-home mom. So my journey has been finding the right opportunities for me throughout my life that kind of fit that work-life balance. So for me, working at TD Bank, I was able to, start working with them part-time while I raised my daughter with my husband. And then also really important to me was being able to have a job in every role that I've taken where I'm able to give back to our community. So for me, it is about enriching the lives of our customers, colleagues, and community. And every step of the way of my career and journey, the best opportunities came out of change that I didn't initiate. And that's a topic I talk a lot about when I talk about career journey. Sometimes life, throws you lemons and you have to make lemonade out of it. But I have found throughout my career that those changes that were kind of thrust upon me led to the most unbelievable outcomes. So excited to be here.
Well, we thank you for that background information. So I think one of the things that you focus on is flexibility and and that's such an important part of being an entrepreneur is being able to be flexible and adapt, as you mentioned, to those curveballs that get thrown at you, good or bad. So thank you and congrats on all of your success as well. Rachel.
Hi. So I'm the founder and CEO of Elroi. We are a privacy data management solution. We help in both enterprises and consumers. We believe privacy is a constitutional right. And my path to getting here kind of started in law school too. I was always an entrepreneur, even at law school when we were studying. And it kind of was the perfect storm. So we had the Equifax data breach at that period of time, and horror story, during my bar exam, my computer crashed. I spent the rest of the summer stressing about that computer. I ended up passing the Michigan bar, but it really pushed me into cybersecurity law and technology law. So that my path it was the synergy of the perfect time at the perfect place.
So I think you bring up another important topic too, that an experience can change your entire destiny. I know it did for me in my own entrepreneurial world as well. And again, congrats on your success. And cybersecurity is such an important topic that we'll probably be coming back to you on for other discussions. So thank you. And Melina.
Hey everyone, I'm Melina. I'm from London and I'm the chief exec and founder of Propel. we're a talent solutions business. But how did my story start? Well, when I was young, I was super inquisitive and super curious. So I graduated in something called New Media all those years ago, and I built CD-ROMs. I don't know if anyone on here can remember what they are. And I did very well at it. And then after a bit of life changing, I found a recruitment company and I went to join them, and they were an IT recruitment company. And within 18 months, I got onto their board and I helped take them from 7 to 70 because they didn't know what new media and digital was. And then I stayed with them for 4 years. We had a different set of values and I wasn't really, definitely not culturally aligned. So I set Propel up, which is based in London, which is a European talent solutions business. We help high growth tech companies find people. And I'm a massive advocate of women and minority groups. And by being in the position I am, it helps me source women, source females, and help them get to their top of the tree and really support them. So I love what I do. I'm passionate about tech and I'm massively passionate about people and diversity. So I'm dead chuffed to be here.
Well, I think we can all see your passion and hear your passion, and I love it. And I did not know that history about the CD-ROM. And what's funny is I was going through a storage unit the other day, and I found all my PhD studies on CD-ROM, and now I have nowhere to put the CD-ROM because none of my computers have the capability of reading a CD-ROM. That's great. I want to talk to you more about that at some point. All right, we'll go on to question 2, and this one's specific to Jennifer and Rachel. And as I mentioned at the opening, there's large funding gap between male and female founders. From your perspective, what do you attribute the factors to be? And I'd like to start with Jennifer if we can.
Sure. I think you have to take a little bit of a look back in history. Back in prior to 1988 and legislation that came out, which was called HR 5050, women business owners had to have a male sign if they wanted to obtain bank financing. A great example is given out by the National Association of Women Business Owners that a female business owner could not get a credit card unless her 17-year-old son would sign for that credit card. And, the story from that, also is so empowering because it was 5 women who from Washington, D.C. that approached their senators and congressmen and said, we need to change this. And that legislation not only changed that law, but also established the Women's Business Center, the National Women's Business Council. So it was the first time that government really started to get involved in promoting women business owners and helping them get the capital that they need. But there are also some studies that women are shooting themselves in the foot a little bit. There's a confidence factor around borrowing that we need to continue to improve upon. Very often studies have shown that women will use all of their savings prior to trying to reach out and borrow money. And that is a stigma that we continue to do financial education on, to show that really the best time to start and borrow money is when you don't need it. And you do want to have some savings in the background for those unexpected events. The number one reason that startup businesses fail is a lack of that starting working capital, and working capital is credit and cash. So we work very hard to educate women business owners about their options for their startups.
So there's some very good guidance there, and it makes so much sense. And you're right. I think we need to do a better job of communicating and instilling this knowledge in individuals, and appreciate your work in being able to do that. So thank you. Rachel, I'd like to get your perspective on this as well.
Similar perspective, definitely believe there's a education gap and a confidence in terms of reaching out to VCs and getting the funding that you need. And second is the decision makers in venture capital. Right now, about 4% of venture capital partners are women, and women partners are 2 times more likely to invest in women. So those decision makers aren't in the room to help make those decisions. And then as women business owners, not having the resources to reach out to those people have also been what I've seen personally, and also in other startups I've seen being the gap.
So I'm hearing some themes around communication, education, and accessibility, which I think are all really important topics, which is a good segue into the next question that'll be asked of all of you. And then the second part of the question will be focusing specifically on Melina and the UK. I'd like to know what your thoughts are on the role of local and national governments within the startup ecosystem. And this is a very interesting question because I'm going to be involved in a panel later today that addresses this very specifically. And I'm really curious what your viewpoints are on this. If we could start with Jane.
Sure. Yeah, I think that, really looking at even where the Levan sector comes from, it's a public-private partnership. So government, and I will say this, government needs to get more interested in the incubator stage and in startup. And we need to be able to identify that this is what creates the culture, maybe not quantifiable for actual jobs in the beginning, but this is the pipeline. And if we don't create the pipeline, we are, as a government official, we're looking at the economics and the driver for jobs. So oftentimes we focus on large companies, the Ciscos of the world, instead of thinking about what is the entrepreneurial engine that we have right now. And I can say, frankly, it's tough to say we're going to spend taxpayer dollars on incubating business. At the same time, we can create spaces for it. So it's not necessarily direct funding, but it's the idea that we create the spaces, the intangibles of what isn't available to entrepreneurs. So I think it's critical. And the way this is done is by educating the legislators, educating from your city commission to your county commission on up. And really looking at, because those resources will vary at every stage, but even if a city government said, we're going to take one portion of our library and call it an incubator space, you are now on the road to creating more of that. And that's, it seems so maybe a little silly, but it's really not. It starts to change the mindset of the commissioners or the councilmen or women about what it's going to take. So I think it's quite critical. I think our society is shifting. And if we continue to look at sort of the old, industrial manufacturing lineup of jobs, we, not to say that doesn't require attention, it certainly does, then we're not moving with the progress and transformation of our day. So that's what I'd say about that.
I'm glad you brought up mindset as well, because I think that's what we do specifically here in South Florida is we need to change the mindset so that we're more innovative, more entrepreneurial. And one of the things that I'm taking a deeper dive into right now is just the formation of county and city governments, how they differ throughout the state and different agendas and their short-term and long-term. And we don't have a universal plan or strategy in terms of what the model looks like, which often causes some challenges as well. And I think that's probably another discussion. Rachel, what are your thoughts on the role of local and national governments within the startup ecosystem?
Specifically, my experience has been it's integral into not only advancing the state agenda. So in Michigan, we're very automotive focused and very traditionally what you see in the Midwest. But we're moving and innovating because that's what technology is doing. So having that intersection between our state government and our local government being invested in our startups. I specifically am part of the Ann Arbor Spark Accelerator. So it cultivates University of Michigan and the schools that are associated in that location. So it's bridging the gap between our startups, helping us identify resources. And similarly in Tampa, part of the Tampa Bay Wave program, which is also utilizes the local environment and economy. So we've create synergy not only in our startups, but our partner businesses, larger businesses, helping them with innovation and continuing to hire people. So it really creates a pipeline for everybody in that space.
So I'm really interested in Detroit and Michigan as a state in particular, knowing that the state and Detroit specifically has had some challenges over the years and even depopulation and the opportunity for the future. And as you mentioned, the automotive industry, it'll be interesting to see what happens as we merge more into that electric vehicle technology and where Detroit and Michigan fall into that in terms of the entrepreneurial pipelines moving forward. Thank you for that. Jennifer, what are your thoughts on the role of local and national governments within the startup ecosystem?
Yeah, throughout my 30-year career working up and down the East Coast of the United States, I think the most successful programs that I've seen is when private and public business work together with government and higher education. Because no one sector, the government can't do it on its own, private and public business can't do it on its own, and our education system, needs to have that conversation with both government, private, and public business to say, what is the workforce that you need for your companies? What type of education do we need to be providing to our future workforce? And working with government to make sure there are the business incentives out there that would attract business to your area. We could use, Amazon as a great example of their search for their next location and headquarters. They looked at the availability and education and quality of the workforce. They looked at what incentives government was going to be providing if they moved there, and even just cost of living for that workforce. So it really is not any one particular sector. We need all the sectors to really work together to make sure that we have an environment where companies can thrive and grow.
So you bring up another interesting subject, probably for a much larger discussion, but you kind of touched on it. And I think that there's a growing disconnect between industry and academia and training organizations in terms of what the needs are. And I think that historically, many academic institutions dictated to industry what they thought their needs were rather than listening to industry. And I think we need to do a much closer alignment between academia and industry and government so that we're all working as one and being able to provide those training pathways or education pathways and credentials, et cetera, that are more relevant to what the needs are of industry as we move forward. Melina, I know you're in the UK, and I'd like to specifically focus on London if we could. I know that there's a lot of support there in the startup ecosystem, and especially around the female journey. And there's some information, hopefully, that you can share in terms of what your thoughts are and what's taking place in your market that we can maybe learn as best practices that can be applied more internationally.
I think what's happened is that we've realised that if we don't wake up and see what the hell is going on, we're not going to make changes. So the VCs in particular have really set up some great initiatives, believe it or not. I know that, back to your point, Rachel, only 7% of the decision makers in the VCs are female, but they've really put initiatives in place. They've got systems, they've got processes, they've got courses where if you are a female, you can get on them regardless of your background or your experience. And back to the mayor's point, there's so many incubators that are just for females in London now. There's also just female VCs, and they're paying it forward and really making changes, because if all these wonderful technology disruptive businesses are hiring, we don't have 50% gender split females doing those jobs, we're screwed, right? So we need to train everyone up. So there are initiatives, there's best practice, there's groups. I mean, there's everyone who cares is diving in, literally. I care about diversity, I care about women. I've set a WhatsApp group. Within 6 months, we've got 300 women on for leading ladies. It's really good because everyone's paying it forward. So the government's doing it a bit as well. Individuals are doing it. The VCs are doing it. And actually, the corporates are doing it as well. Back to your point, the corporates are really getting involved to make change and make sure that we support women and move things forward. I mean, we're miles away, but we're getting there and we're taking it seriously now. And I used to go into lots of meetings and run round tables where all the VCs would say, we really need more women, but they do nothing about it. Find us some more women. Well, actually, let's hold you accountable. How are we going to do that? And we can do that by statistics and surveys now and data. Rachel can tell us all about data, but it's about the data. And there's some great tech out there that really looks at diversity. It's kicking off in London.
So interesting enough, I've had the opportunity to live in the UK 2 times in my life, one for when I was pursuing my education, another because of my career. And I will tell you, just so you know, as a side note, that one of the companies that I helped co-found out of London, 70% of our employee base were all females. So that was big news when we were putting that together a number of years back. As we go into our next question, I'd like to talk about critical challenges that are facing female founders as they build their startups and how the pandemic has impacted this journey, if at all. And I know that we're still in the middle of this pandemic and the environment is changing all of the time, but there's definitely been some kind of external influence in terms of what this looks like. Jennifer, do you have any thoughts on this?
Sure. McKinsey did a study on the effect of COVID on the working woman and especially minority women. And just in the past year, we've lost 2 million women from the workforce because of COVID, because of them being not only business owners, but moms, They had to become teachers. They had to take care of some of the elders in their family. So we were making strides prior to COVID, but COVID absolutely set back women in the workplace and even women entrepreneurs starting up their businesses. There was a big pause, right? If you had a business where customers used to walk through your front door, that wasn't happening. And many companies had to pivot because I think of our own, right? We weren't able to serve our customers there for a period of time with them walking through the front door of our stores. But we worked very hard and very quickly to figure out how to deliver our products and services virtually. And I think when I look at the continuing effects of COVID, not only has it affected women in the workplace, but even their pay. Many women had to step back and maybe take part-time jobs instead of full-time jobs. So like you said, we're not out of the pandemic, but certainly the Innovation Center and programs like this, I think we're on the right path of kickstarting this and moving women forward again.
Yeah, I agree. And you brought up something that really validated something I heard when I was driving into work this morning about exactly what you were saying about how many women had to leave their jobs to be home, to be teachers, but also to provide elderly care to parents and among other things. So it's been a very interesting period in time and will continue. And I know that from our own model, what we're looking at ways that we can create increased accessibility to programs and events and services, whether there's a pandemic or not, so that virtual access and making it as easy as possible to help support the founders of both male and female gender. Melina, I'd like to turn that over to you if you could talk about how the pandemic has impacted the journey, if at all.
Yeah, I would love to discuss this because there is huge amounts of negativity, and I get that, and it's rubbish because females are the sole carers, and we know. But from a really great perspective is finally employers realise that actually you don't have to work from 9 till 6, you don't have to commute in. So single mums and mums that are carers, or people that come from minority groups that can't afford to get into work or do strange hours, and now the talent pool has opened up. And actually, we can all work, and we've got more opportunities for females. I really believe that, but I do understand there's been huge challenges. But that is one thing that is more accessibility to talent and more accessibility to females that work under different timeframes, etc., because they've got young children, etc., etc. So I'm feeling quite positive about it.
So it's interesting that you say all that too, is because I'm more and more intrigued when I see job postings and how many virtual opportunities that exist that didn't exist a year ago. And now you can literally work in one country and live in another. And there's so many great incentives that are being provided by certain countries to encourage that. But that's great, because I truly believe that there are more opportunities than ever before, and we have to be creative about how we pursue them and offer them, but it's definitely happening. Rachel, what are your thoughts?
So I definitely believe that work from home changed the dynamic of how our workplaces or how our environments, our ecosystem. I currently have employees that span across the US, and I do have a large majority of women who have kids, and we have shifted our work schedule. So I do think there's more opportunity for women to get in more and take more risk. For example, I've had more women who are more willing to take risks because they have more time in their schedule. On the inverse of that, I am a woman founder, but I'm also a minority founder, and I can't help but see the intersection that's been impacted because of COVID. We have seen an increase, even in fundraising, that there's fear-based decision-making in venture capital last year in 2020. And when you have fear, you make your decisions based on instinct. So what we saw was minorities, specifically women founders, getting less funding because, and statistically, I'm sure we can, you can poke holes in it, but statistically, you're going to go based on your instinct and feel a little bit more comfortable with other individuals. So we've seen that impact not only for women founders, but minority founders as well that were impacted. So I do think women took more risks during COVID, started their own businesses, had more flexibility, but on the other side of the coin, there was an impact to our minority communities because of the uncertainty in the market.
So when you talk about funding too, what I've noticed, and you can agree or disagree, but I've seen that there have been more opportunities where you have access to funding outside of your immediate backyard, whereas previously most concentrated on what was maybe a 50-mile radius of where they lived, or an investor was only looking at supporting something that was local. But now those opportunities have expanded to national and international resources, depending on what the opportunity is. So I think that there's some changes that have occurred that are probably here forevermore. Jane, I'd like to turn that over to you to conclude with this question in terms of the pandemic and how it's impacted the founder's journey.
Sure. So I agree with everything that's been said. I mean, no doubt about it. The pandemic has certainly had women step into a caretaker role to sort of like a 10x degree. But at the same time, the silver lining that we can conduct business in this way, that you have access now to meetings, the amount of time that it took to transport, the cost to transport, and that we can work virtually is amazing. But I would leave us with this. I think that the business owners need to really consider, it's great that you figured out how to get everything on Zoom and that you provided workspaces or laptops or whatever it is at home. At the same time, the way we work with our teams and our staff has to shift, because now, and I'm starting to experience this in my own business, certainly our working moms, they have to juggle in a different way. And so what I'm saying is, you couldn't just take the 9-to-5 day and drop it into Zoom and say, welcome to the virtual world, because that's not what's happening when you're at home. There's interruptions, things are and so I think, sort of what Jennifer said about that work-life balance, right? Now we're 24/7. And I'm working to make sure my team doesn't get burnt out because they feel obligated to this screen and to their phone. And that's not the kind of life I want for my team and for my people. I want everyone to have a full life where they're quite productive, which may mean different hours. So it's a constant inquiry right now. And so I would just tie up the conversation with, for the business owners to be thinking, okay, great, check mark, we got the technology, but what are we doing to actually support? Because culture looks different when we're not all together in a room. So that's why I did that.
So I couldn't agree with you more. And I know myself, our team, we're all victims of when does the day start, when does the day end, and you probably work more than you ever have before. So self-care management is a topic I know that we're specifically focusing on, because I think that's an area where entrepreneurs often neglect themselves. And how do you look after yourselves and the people around you, that it's not always about work? So I know personally that's an area that I need to improve upon too. As we go into the next question, it's a short question, may have a longer answer, but what are you seeing in your local market as a great support model for female founders? And if we could start with Melina. So you're on mute, sir, Melina.
I'm so, after a year, you would have got that right, okay. Lots of clusters of women coming together to support each other, lots of groups, lots of membership groups, lots of bits of technology like platforms like this where women coming together to support each other. It's the same kind of thing, but it's been accelerated, and actually people are really honest and open about it being a support group. So just that same kind of stuff, platforms, meets, on virtual meets and that kind of thing, really. Over to someone else. I know that's not really detailed, but it's the same kind of support stuff.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that too, because I think with the use of technologies we found in the last year, although nobody's mastered the mute unmute button, so I do it all of the time. The number of networks that you now have access to that you didn't have before is incredible. It's literally global in nature, and it's just kind of amazing what's happening as a result of the innovative ways of thinking and resources that are being offered. Jane, I'd like to go back to you to talk on this subject.
Yeah, it's really very similar. There are more groups that have been created. There's WhatsApp channels. There's new meetups, and it is exactly what you said. It's the access that we have to those that we didn't have access to before. And what I'm personally finding is I've been connected to more women who are putting together their own venture capital funds, and I am really excited about that. I'm actually in North Carolina right now to meet with a group of women who are dedicated to that. And I didn't hear about that last year. So that there's an uptick on women that are coming together that want to provide resources to other women more than just support. And that's what I'm looking forward to. I don't have zero statistics on this. This is just based on my own experience. But when I think you look at women who have let's just call it made it, right? They want to put their money now, maybe not in cryptocurrency or in other investments. They're looking at investing in each other. And that's just, it's a beautiful thing. And I think hopefully, we'll have some statistics soon about how much more that has impacted the market, but that's happening for sure.
I love how you said how we're investing in each other rather than just looking for that quick return, which has often been very historical in the world of funding. So I appreciate that. Rachel, what are your thoughts?
So I do think there's a lot more access. What I've seen, again, you can jump on so many conferences, and there's a lot more free resources too, because you're not in person. So many more webinars and connecting with the communities. So I have seen, I'm part of multiple different women's groups to support startups, other startup leaders, and now accelerators that have gone fully virtual. So you can get access across specifically the US, to accelerators that you may not have gotten access to previously for a different network. And also the support that we are seeing in these communities across the globe. I definitely agree.
Great, and appreciate that too. Thank you so much. And Jennifer, you get the opportunity to close out this question in terms of the local market and great support model for female founders.
Sure, absolutely. With the social change that has been occurring over the last 12 to 24 months, we've seen a lot more private and corporations talking about diversity. I'm the Florida chair of diversity for TD Bank, and it's about connecting with organizations and bringing women to those organizations so that they can get the support they need, whether it's through education, funding, and like Jane said, there are lots of organizations where women who have come so far now want to pay it forward. I think of like Impact 1000. You see those types of women's groups coming together, putting up their own money to pay it forward and continue to support women. So very happy to see that continue to grow, and the more we can pay it forward, the better off we'll be.
So obviously with the advancement of technology and more people staying at home, there are more resources to connect to. So now you have to pick and choose what social media platform you belong to, et cetera. So now I'm challenged with this new Clubhouse thing. I'm addicted, but I'm trying not to be. But I've noticed how many rooms are now being built all around women and entrepreneurs and funding and the global network that is increasing. And when you go to these rooms every day, they expand and there's more and more members that are participating. And it's not just females, it's males, and there's discussions that are taking place and great things are truly happening. As we build out our programming and certification courses at the Levan Center, we are making every effort to be truly inclusive and accessible for all founders. What role do you think ecosystem builders can play in the female founders journey, and what resources or networks should be available? And I use examples like customized programming, mentorship, funding, new types of networks, et cetera. But I'd like to open this one to the panel, so rather than just target any individual, but I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on this. It's a big question, open, but an opportunity for you to provide your own feedback on that.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. I think, I think when you're looking to make sure that you're reaching out to a full diverse group of people and that they're all having similar opportunities, you have to look at the data, right? I think Melina was talking about that. So you need to capture who are we reaching out to? Who are we leaving out of the equation? And the only way you can know that is to look inward and look at the data of who your outreach is meeting and who might you be leaving to the wayside.
So that's great conversation about who we're leaving out. And I think that's very, very important to identify who all of the stakeholders are and how do we get them under one roof so that we're all collaborating, moving in the same direction. Does anybody else on the panel have any additional thoughts regarding that?
I'll chime in. I absolutely agree, Jennifer. I think we need to be looking at that. And I think when you look at the ecosystem, we want to make sure everyone is included. I also think there's something around the entrepreneurial journey that is the entrepreneurial journey. So I think that there is, identifying that certainly we want to support women, no doubt about it, minorities. We want to have it be inclusive, but I think sometimes out of the conversation, we separate ourselves versus coming together. And I don't know the balance on this. I just point to it because I think, the entrepreneurial journey is different than that of, a president or just a CEO, not just a CEO. But you get what I'm saying. When I think about entrepreneurs, I think about, that you probably paid a payroll, at least on your credit card, that you're the one that worries about whether the bills are going to be paid, and that you are, creating an environment for your teams to keep them empowered without them knowing that the bank's, balance is dropping. And I think so in some ways, we have to bring everybody in, and then also identify our similar journey as entrepreneurs. And I think sometimes that gets lost in conversation, and it's something I think we also have to be deliberate about. Like everything, we have to be deliberate about it, and then bring us all together. So it's not, I'm a female entrepreneur, you're a male entrepreneur, we don't have the same experience. We actually have a lot in common, and let's look at what that is. So that's what I'd add.
Yeah, Jane, it's also about the workforce that you build as you're building out your company, right?
Yes.
It's very important to TD Bank that we have a diverse workforce, because we want to make sure we have representation of our customer base.
Yep.
Right? Because even as we're developing products and solutions, we want to make sure we're developing the ones that are going to meet the needs of that diverse customer base.
Right. Across the board. I love it.
That's the ridiculous thing. When you look at the people that fund all this, they're such a small percentage, but the 50% of the world are females, but we're not building the products or funding them appropriately. So how do they have the insight to know what we want, need, or desire? Right. It's all about the groups. It's all about the people. And I love your point, Mayor, which is, you were talking about wider groups and allies and coming together and sharing and all that kind of stuff is so important. Then the small networks and the collaboration and it just swirling it all up and coming together and learning and giving ideas and being accessible is really important to what you're trying to build. Make sure that you're accessible regardless of how senior you are. It's not about how much experience you've got. It's about connecting with people and sharing ideas, because it's ageless, this stuff. But I wish I was in Florida now. I wish I was part of it.
I'm in London.
You have an open invitation anytime. So, Rachel, did you have any final thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I definitely agree. Looking at the data and determining what would help in that specific ecosystem, in terms of what a program can offer. I definitely believe the network and opening up, because many of the times the people who are seeking out programs need that network, and then offerings specifically would be useful for me because I'm in cybersecurity, and I know your program is aligned to cybersecurity, potentially giving opportunities for those certifications that are up and coming or will impact businesses. So we've seen an increase of cyber threats. We know that you'll need your financials, things that that is across the board. To the mayor's point, it will impact your entrepreneurial journey overall.
Yep, some really good points. And during that conversation, I had a bad flashback to maxing out all of my credit cards in order to make payroll, and nobody ever knew the pressure that entrepreneur was under. And do you take the second mortgage out on the house? Do you sell the car? So, entrepreneurs have experienced that there's ups and downs along that journey. So, but thank you for all of your feedback on that specific question. The next question, I'd like you to look back on your own journey, and what is the one thing that you wish someone could have told you at the very start, Jennifer?
Oh, wow. From the very start, that it's okay that your career is going to take, turns to the left and right unexpectedly, and that it's not a straight line, that there's going to be opportunities to, take a step sideways rather than a step forward. And sometimes those steps, are going to provide you with the skill sets and experiences that then, put you 3 rungs up the ladder. So just knowing that your career journey can go sideways, backwards, before it takes that big leap forward.
Yep, some great guidance and advice there. Jane, what was the one thing you wish you were told at the very beginning of your journey?
Yeah, I was going to say something similar, so I will change it because that's good advice, Jennifer. I love it. So I love this phrase, and it was another coach said it was make it bad, make it better. So get over it, get it launched, and then make it better once you get it launched. Because if you spend all of your time nitpicking how to get it done, you haven't taken the action. You've got to take the action, and then you can perfect it. And which is the opposite of what we're taught our entire lives, right? So now as an entrepreneur, it's welcome to the game. Make it bad, make it better, just get it done. And then you can improve.
Very good advice. Rachel?
Probably something people told me a lot and I didn't listen to. So changing your question a little bit is the worst thing that can happen is a no. So in terms of having the confidence to ask, and the worst thing is they say no, and then you can move on. And I think a lot of us, specifically women, we get scared in having the confidence to live with no's because you're going to face it a lot. I get no's every day. So.
All right, so no means yes. You'll find the yes somewhere along the way, right? Okay. And Melina, what's the one thing you wish you were told at the very start?
Really simple, but to believe in myself and not allow other people's judgments to take control, or for me to think what other people think of me is actual fact, and to really kind of push forward and keep going and realize you don't have to be brilliant. There's some stuff you're going to be absolutely rubbish at, but it doesn't matter because you're not perfect. So sometimes females can be their biggest critic, right? So that would be my advice. And it's okay to ask if you don't know something.
Great advice. Appreciate that. Now let's move into the section on talent. And talent is always a challenge for any startup or any company scaling, especially within the technology sector. What is your perspective on women in tech and the startup ecosystem? And do you see an increased representation of women? And how has identifying skilled talent for your firm or startup been? It's a number of questions embedded in one, so you can take that in multiple directions. But I think it's really important to touch on this. And Melina, if you could start.
There's quite a lot of questions there, John. I
know.
I don't know what to start with. What is your perspective on women in? So my perspective in terms of women in the tech sector, we know that we're starved of it still, but I think we're starting to catch up. I know that the younger generation, from a diverse perspective, not just gender, is starting to actually get, there is more opportunity there. From the top, it's still very challenging. We don't see many LGBT plus people. We don't see many BAME people. We don't see many women at top. Whatever people say, we don't. This group here, very unusual. Great ladies. We should catch up after this because there's not many of us. So I think we need to make more initiatives around that. How long does it, how has identified skilled talent for your firm? It takes a while to find talent. And it also, I think that actually you need to be super strategic if you're going to make it diverse. I see so many super entrepreneurs that have 2 or 3 people in their team. They're normally men, they're normally geeks, they're normally middle class and have Oxford education, and they leave it. They just find more people that look like them and feel like them and copycats of them. And then before you know it, there's 50 people in the company and there's no women. There's no. So my point is, look, hurry up, get on with it, deal with it at the beginning. Otherwise, it's going to be really challenging. And we know that diverse groups of people are the most successful groups because they've got different opinions. I didn't answer all those, but there's some. Over to you, girls.
You did a fantastic job. I appreciate it. Rachel.
In terms of finding talent, I've been very strategic. I went to a HBCU, so a historically Black college, and have strategically partnered with organizations who also feed that pipeline. As a minority founder, I don't want it to be lost on just me, like here's the minority, and then we found people who fit that gap. So definitely networking has been our priority in making our core values for talent. And so that's really been a focus for us specifically. And then I think I lost myself on the other question, so I apologize.
You nailed it. It's all about identifying talent, and is the talent pool there? Are there challenges? You can take it in so many different directions, and especially in the world of cybersecurity, I mean, it's its own unique.
Yeah, so I'll add one other plug for cybersecurity space. There's 3 million empty jobs in cybersecurity, and there's across the board, across women and men, there's an availability to have soft skills and very hard skills, so technical skills. So me specifically, I'm a privacy attorney, and I'm sit in the intersection of compliance, but there's so much room in the space to fall into technology without having your traditional path there. So I think in terms of how we expand and move forward and addressing some of that difficulty is also being okay if you have a soft skill in transitioning over into cyber or any kind of technology.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned soft skills, because when we talk to industry, often we find that that's the biggest disconnect is I got a great person with this knowledge and ability, but the soft skills component is missing, and we have to reinvent that. And we need to do a better job of making sure that soft skills, hard skills, knowledge, et cetera, credentials all match. Jennifer, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you just look back 30 years ago, we weren't talking about chief information officers, right? So, and not every company thought of themselves as a technology company, but technology is now a piece of every single business. So opportunity is there. So I go back to the beginning where, it's about STEM education in our schools and making sure that, students are seeing what opportunities lie ahead. And that's, things like today where we have these amazing women on the panel and talking about that journey and showing people what opportunities lie ahead of them so that they can see themselves in that role. They can carve that path. And especially with entrepreneurs, being able to lean on the trailblazing that other people have done and learn from that, learn from their mistakes and learn from their successes. That's how we pay it forward and we get more people to see their opportunity. My favorite quote is, if you're comfortable in the seat that you're in, it's time for a change. And if you're terrified of what lies ahead, you're heading in the right direction.
I love that. I haven't heard that before. I want to write that one down, but that's great. I love that guidance and advice. And Jane, you get to close out this particular question around talent and technology.
So when I think about talent, and I think about the soft skills and the hard skills, I think our job as founders is to understand we're there to actually cultivate what we're calling soft skills. And I don't know that many of us actually take that on because it takes time and it will take more resources. But, when I'm looking for someone, I'm looking for somebody who's got coachability. Are you coachable? Not necessarily are you a fit to my culture. Now, that is important, and I'm not going to defy every business book that was ever written that says that that's the case. But I think that there is, it's our responsibility to create that and to make sure that the folks, the talent that we bring in, have that element of coachability because we are so diverse now. And where people come from and what they were raised with and how they view the world is totally different. And it's not so homogenous like this or that. And so I think, when you look at talent, that's what I look for around the talent conversation is coachability, openness, willingness. And then, I can create as a founder the parameters and make sure that we are diverse and that we have selected the right pool. But then when I get in those group interviews, it's not about what are your skills. I probably know that from your resume. I'm looking about how do you interact? And I don't just say no soft skills, you're out. I look at, are you coachable? And I've said that like 15 times, but I think it's super important.
So it's interesting you bring up resume. I mean, it's interesting to see what a resume looks like today versus what it looked like 2 and 5 years ago. Like just the whole format of it now and the innovative ways of doing things or not doing things is kind of interesting as well. Now I'd like to talk about the female founder's journey and what's happened over the last 5 years from each of your perspectives. Has the journey changed for the female founder over the last 5 years? And Melina, if you could start that off.
Well, back to the point what we've discussed here, of course, there's more support systems than what they've ever been. So it has changed in that perspective. But is there as much funding as what there should be? No, there's not. To lots of VCs and private equity businesses look at females as charities, yes. So that, look, you just look at the data, look at the statistics. It's not where it needs to be. I'm not going to fluff it up. I'm normally a very positive person, but on this one, I think the challenges are still there until we've got a way to go. We're in a much better space than what we are. And Gen Z is coming up and they're not going to take it. We've got some great young girls that are ready for it and fighting fit. So let's see where we get to.
It reminds me of the Twisted Sister song, We're Not Going to Take It. I think it was Twisted Sister. Rachel, what are your thoughts?
I definitely agree. I do think the younger generation, a lot of it's about representation, right? So we had the Bumble founder be one of the first women to reach, or the youngest to reach $1 billion IPO. She had her son on her hip, and it just changes what you feel or how you feel in terms of representation of what a woman founder looks like and what their journey can do and what they can achieve. So one, it's a success story, but we're seeing more and more of these unicorns appear. So I definitely think it's a projection in what the path from the last 5 years and what success looks like. We do see women-led companies typically perform better in their portfolios. So again, I think it's in a path in a good direction, and that resources will continue to become more and more available to founders who are women.
So you mentioned unicorns, and obviously there's so much opportunity for women, female founders within this area, but I'm also curious about the decacorn companies that are on the horizon and how many female founders will be the ones that made that happen. Jane, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge. I think Melina said it, let's not sugarcoat it. That's why we're here. That's why we're having the discussion. At the same time, there is so much more opportunity than there's ever been. And I think what's important now is just that women support women, that women support people, that people support women, that we all come together and say, this is humanity on the line here, and we have a real opportunity to make an impact and shape and form what the future looks like for us. And I think we have to have these conversations, and at the same time, remember that we are humanity, right? This is not an us versus them situation. That's the worst thing we can do, is to separate ourselves. At the same time, be deliberate about what we need to identify, use statistics, be data driven to know that we haven't made it yet, but to still keep that that unity, that collaboration together, I think is really important. But women we are challenged, and we will continue to be until we're not. And so we'll keep having these conversations.
Absolutely, and appreciate that. And Jennifer, your thoughts on this? Final thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with everything that everyone said. I think it's also, as we're seeing more programming and support coming out, it is getting that information to the female founders. The SBA has some amazing programs for women-owned businesses, but a lot of women-owned business owners don't even know about them. So it's educating people and showing them where they can go for financing, where they can go for education, and where they can go for support. So the more we talk about what's available and make that connection, bringing the female founder to the programs that can help propel their business, the better we're going to be, and we're going to move that dial faster.
Great. I appreciate it. So all of you, that was really great guidance and advice, and appreciate the input. And as we're getting close to the end of the hour here, what I'd like to do is what I call the lightning round. And what I would like to ask you in 30 seconds or less, is there a topic that we did not cover today that should be addressed on a future panel? Or is there anything that you would like to say as a closing remark that's relevant to the subject that we talked about here today? And Melina, if I could start with you.
Wow, thank you for that, John. I'd just like to, look, without these wonderful groups coming together and sharing all our ideas, I'd just like to say thank you for being a part of a really great afternoon. And let's keep talking, let's keep collaborating, let's keep mentoring, and let's work with our allies as well.
Great, and we enjoyed talking to you, and thanks again for joining us from across the pond. And Rachel, what are your final thoughts in 30 seconds or less? Is there something that we've missed out, or anything you want to provide in terms of guidance, advice?
No, I think it was a very holistic view of what the space was. I definitely think in terms of taking action steps. So I definitely think these conversations are important and impactful. And in next steps for, I think, all of us on the panel, we are open to mentorship. We're open to helping anybody who's interested in this journey. It's a hard journey to go on, and then assisting as we continue to have more women in the space and in propelling, humanity forward.
Great. I appreciate your input there. Thank you. Jane?
Yeah, one of the things I say when people tell me they want to run for office is you can only lead as far as you have your life together. And I think that applies also in entrepreneurship. And I think we touch on it when we say the word self-care, but I think there really is being very clear that, this human being, Jane Bolin, everything that shows up out here is a reflection of what's happening here. And that might be a very deep thing to be leaving you with. But I do think that's a conversation to be had with founders, because we tend not just to forget taking care of ourselves, but we forget that, we are all of it. So I'll just leave you with that. Thanks.
Great. We love deep thoughts as we conclude. So thank you. And Jennifer, to conclude.
Yeah, thank you, John. I think it's start that conversation with your local bank early, before you need financing. I think one of the most surprising things that entrepreneurs find out is that banks can help them with so many more things other than just checking accounts and loans. There's cybersecurity aspects. TD Bank has 9 million customers. We're always looking to help entrepreneurs meet the people that they need to meet. So we can help you make business connections. So, make that connection with your local bank, even before you've started your LLC or started your business. They can really help you as a trusted advisor, and we don't charge for our time.
So that's music to everybody's ears, and I don't think a lot of people understand that those resources are available free of charge to help guide you down the pathway. So thank you for bringing that up. As we conclude today's virtual panel, I think it's safe to say female founders and leaders are changing the world. There's a definite gender gap as it relates to funding, but the positive news is that there's never been a better time for an entrepreneur to start and grow a business, and the world is paying dividends for women. There are literally millions of women around the world with great ideas, passion, and enthusiasm driving the female founders' journey forward. As a global society, we need to do more to eliminate barriers, including cultural and financial, and support female entrepreneurs, whether they are brand new or well-established success stories. Multiple stakeholders have opportunities to better align and support female entrepreneurs, including industry, government, academia, financial institutions, venture capitalists, and the media. Let's shine the spotlight on female founders and continue to draw attention to success stories while we break down the barriers discussed in today's panel. I cannot thank our panelists enough for participating in today's event, the Female Founders Journey. Jennifer Starkey from TD Bank, Jane Bolin, the Mayor of Oakland Park City, Melina Jacovou from Propel, and Rachel Cash from Elroi. Thank you for sharing your passion, excitement, knowledge, and personal journeys. We look forward to continuing this conversation in the future, and we welcome you back anytime. The Alan B. Levan NSU Broward Center of Innovation will open this summer. In the meantime, we are offering scheduled virtual events, and you can view our calendar by visiting our webpage, nova.edu/innovation, or you can email us at innovation@nova.edu, or you can call our hotline at 954-262-TECH, that's TECH, and one of our friendly team members will be happy to assist. And don't forget to check us out on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you for joining us today. Stay safe and healthy. And this concludes today's virtual panel. Thank you again, everybody. Greatly appreciate it.